Kia ora, talofa, namaste, haere mai, and welcome to the Nichecast. This is the official, certified podcast of thenichecache.com. If you're good at listening, you can jam us on the podcast on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple. If you love a bit of reading, you can hit us up on the website, thenichecache.com, where we go deep into Aotearoa sports, and that's all we're here to do. No bullkaka, no fluff. We're just here for Aotearoa sports, and that's it. Maybe a bit of Pacific Island sports as well, because Tonga's a pretty good international rugby league team, and we will be discussing them as well. But we are here to chat through Aotearoa sport, and it's a fantastic time to be a sports fan in Aotearoa for obvious reasons that we're about to discuss. If you do like the Nichecase, you can just stay on our website, just leave it open. It's all good. Like, just click on something else, leave it open. Crikey Jack, if you listen to the podcast once, just leave it open. Keep listening without listening. It's all good. But there's multiple ways you can tap in with the Nichecase on the website, the podcast, the newsletter via Substack coming out every Monday and Friday, nichecache.substack.com. And of course, we do our best to clip up some sporting action on the social medias as well, just to fit in, really. Like, we're not too big on fitting in. We fit out, we're avant-garde, but we do fit into the technological realms because the clips go hard, the sporting clips go hard, and we do a lot of work for that. And if you want to support us, all our mahi, everything we're doing, there's a bunch of free ways you can do that just by tuning in, tapping in, or you can join the Patreon whānau, patreon.com/EL Nichecase. You can, a couple of dollars a month, that's it. And you get access to our weekly bonus podcast. The bonus podcast also comes out via Substack. So you can sign up to our free newsletter on Substack, full of Aotearoa sport. And if you're feeling generous, you can upgrade to a paid Substack subscription and access our weekly bonus podcast as well. And you can make a donation through Buy Me a Coffee. Bunch of ways to support us financially. But again, you don't have to. Just being here with us is all good. We'll get into the mindfulness, but I want to just throw out some mindfulness myself, because a good place to start with your mindfulness is being grateful. And I am grateful. Like, a lot of these jokers, they do some weird stuff. Like, they do some goofy stuff, some silly stuff, and we always, it's not like they're batting. They've got a batting average of 98 or something like that with a strike rate of 100. These dudes, they do some goofy stuff, they do some silly stuff, but the decision makers, the power brokers, they started the World Test Championship. They started the Pacific Championship for Rugby League. They decided the A-League needed to expand into Aotearoa with Auckland FC. And I'm grateful for those three initiatives. World Test Championship, obviously Aotearoa won the first one, so I'm going to be grateful of that. Like, we win, so I love it. But the World Test Championship's pretty cool. We got a lot of, there's a lot of context, and just it's more exciting. Test cricket's more exciting because of the World Test Championship. So shout out to the folks who said we need a World Test Championship. The Pacific Championship, it's not perfect. I'd love to have a mid-year test, a little bit more international rugby league throughout the year. But I'm grateful for what we have, because we've now had 2 years of Pacific Championship Rugby League, men and women. Kiwi Ferns playing in PNG. We got Fiji versus Cook Islands. We got so much fun international rugby league at the end of the year, and I like it. I like watching international rugby league. It's brutal and sloppy, and I love it. The brutality speaks for itself. The sloppiness, these teams are just coming together for a couple of weeks. The set plays aren't quite there. The cohesion, the chemistry, the combinations, it's not quite there. But these players are very intense because it's International Rugby League, and they are very skillful. And when you combine the intensity with the skill, you get razzle-dazzle footy. You get the craziest tries you're ever going to see. You don't get the backline shifts and the precision of the NRL or NRLW, but you get highly entertaining rugby league. So shout out to the Pacific Championships and whoever started that. And shout out, I'm grateful for the A-League Derby. I'm grateful that Auckland FC is now in the A-League. I'm not picking sides, so I'm also grateful that the Wellington Phoenix are still here, still trucking along. Not only do we get 2 A-League teams from Aotearoa, not only do we get an Auckland football team, a Wellington football team, but we get the Derby. Because that Derby was crazy. It was also brutal, but it wasn't sloppy. Like, it was...
Well, I mean, I can think of one moment. It was pretty sloppy, but, you know.
That's true. But I mean, Alex Paulsen wasn't sloppy, right? Like, Alex Paulsen's not the sloppy
Alex
dude.
Paulsen's never sloppy.
Exactly. So I think that's just a minor
He doesn't need a bib when he eats. He's never sloppy.
He doesn't need it. No bib Paulsen. I need a bib, though. So I'm a bit sloppy. Like, wearing a white t-shirt when you're chowing down a pizza or a curry, like, it's a bit dangerous territory.
We've all been there. Except for Alex Paulsen, we've all been there.
Yeah. A-League Derby was brutal. Like, those dudes were playing rugby league, but they were also playing high-quality football. And it was a very enjoyable viewing experience. So whoever decided to bring in Auckland FC and give us an A-League Derby, shout out to you. Shout out to the big crowd in the Cape Town and Wellington. Shout out to the big crowd and Mount Smart for Tonga. Like, Kiwis love rugby league. I should rephrase that. Folks in Aotearoa love rugby league. Of all cultures, all ethnicities, we love rugby league. All cultures, all ethnicities, we love football. We love cricket and we love basketball, and that's why the niche cache exists. Somehow, though, me being the rugby league guy, I went to watch Auckland FC, their first game, which was amazing, at the Temple of Mount Smart. And then you, the football guy, went back to the Temple of Mount Smart to watch the Kiwis play Tonga. So we've done some nice overlapping stuff there. This is leading into the mindfulness, and I am grateful for those 3 initiatives. I'm grateful to be here because it's a fantastic time to be alive with Aotearoa sport. Take us into the mindfulness.
Well, we've had gratitude there, and now I will add humor to the mix with an Alan Watts quote that says, man suffers because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun. So keep a feeling of gratitude. Gratitude in one hand, humor in the other hand. Don't take yourself too seriously. Humor and humility, I guess, both of those things count in the same mindfulness there. But they have to stay in the same hand because you only got 2 hands. So gratitude in one hand, humor and humility in the other hand. That's a pretty good recipe.
Beauty. We have a busy podcast today. Once again, for obvious reasons. So we don't have a lot of space for the old basketball. Steven Adams has played 2 games in the NBA. I'm aware of the Tauihi competition. Haven't really tapped in too hard, but we will, I think next week or the coming weeks, we will get back into the basketball groove because it is one of our big 4 sports and we want to pay respect to basketball and all the basketball that is happening. But it'll be rude of us not to mention that the New Zealand Breakers had a win last night, which means I think they won their double header this weekend. Am I correct?
Yeah, and they didn't just win it, they absolutely thrashed both games. Like they smashed over 100 points in both. They beat Melbourne 113-79 in Melbourne, place they hadn't won for 6 years. And before that, Saturday, 109.82 at home against Adelaide. So two massive victories, like massive in context of those games, and also massive in a way that's got me thinking, well, I've got to reassess where the Breakers are at here. Because these aren't losses we can say, well, you beat a team that's about to sack their coach, or you beat you beat a Brisbane team that was sloppy in week one, and then they came back and beat you the next time they played, kind of thing. Because they also beat a decent Sydney team right before that as well in Sydney. So I think it's three. I think that was the previous game too. So I think that's 3 wins in a row for the Breakers. Was the Sydney one the other one? I don't know. I'm not going to go through the things and figure it out because these are and the apps are a little bit annoying. But like, I didn't think they had this in them. When they've won, I was thinking, well, any team can win games at this kind of level if you've got someone like Parker Jackson Cartwright playing at MVP caliber. He is like head and shoulders the MVP of the league so far after the first couple months. Whether he can sustain that, we'll see. It might only take one injury to him as well for this to, for the House of Cards to come fluttering down or whatever. But right now, he is superb, and he's getting pretty handy support from Matt Mooney as well. They're one of their other imports who's looking excellent. And I mean, this, I just the idea that they could lock in and have a few good days and win some games like that. Even the bad teams can do that. The bad teams can't put up 113 points away to Melbourne though. Like that's a game changer. That's a sort of that's a perception changer there. And I have been trying to think about this. Like, how do I kind of
You've been
reconcile
trying to think?
my trying to think? I haven't been thinking. I've just been trying to think.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
right.
good effort. Well done.
Yeah, I made an effort to make an effort. Um, yeah, trying to reconcile the conception I had of the Breakers, not just preseason, but the conception I had of the Breakers 2 weeks ago, like it's into the season after they'd come back from the NBA stuff and that game in Christchurch a couple of weeks ago where they're absolutely shocking. Like, how did they get to here from there? And well, one of the things that I mentioned last week after the beat Sydney was the idea that they'd tighten up the rotations. Like Coach Kopp had been given 10 players on getting 10 different players out in the court for a few of the first quarters of these games. He'd been sharing minutes pretty substantially. Had tightened that up. Had given PJC a whole lot more. PJC actually only played about 26 minutes against Melbourne, but that's because they won by so much, were leading by so big for so long that he didn't have to play a whole lot of the second half. They were able to get him some rest, which is pretty superb for a guy who probably does need to play 35 plus minutes most weeks for them to be at the like capacity that they want to be at. So that's interesting. Like, that was already there. I'm also starting to think, well, they've just had their 3 best performances of the season by a mile at a time when Mitch McCarron and Mojave King and Max Darling are out injured. I'm going to cut Max Darling some slack, not only because of the Kiwi bias, but also because no one expected him to be a starting level player. He was the last guy signed to the main roster. So anything he does is a little bit of a boost. You can't expect him to suddenly become all NBA type thing. Mojave King and Mitch McCarron were, though, expected to be maybe even the second and third kind of options in their offense, not necessarily as a scoring. King more of a scorer, McCarron more of a facilitator. I think it's quite interesting that, well, I'm interested. I'm taking note of the fact that they've had 2 outstanding offensive nights when those 2 guys who were supposed to be quite important to their offense and who I had quite big question marks over as well coming into the season haven't been available. I've jotted that down. Also jotted down that just the general idea of Coach Koppinen coming in from Europe, first time head coach. It makes sense they're not going to hit the ground running, right? It makes sense that they might need a little bit of time, relatively short preseason as well, and then disrupted stuff with the NBA games and whatnot, like some of these self-inflicted disruptions, which I'm also not going to say that the stuff that's been really annoying about the Breakers is vindicated in any way. I think they could have been a better team if you didn't send them to America, if you weren't pissing around with this Taco Falls stuff, if you just if the ownership took the team a little bit more seriously as far as the NBL specifically goes. I think that might actually have been been a benefit to the team rather than a hindrance. I don't think that's a controversial thing to say. But it makes sense that Coach Kopp would have a sort of snowballing effect to things as he starts to get on the ground, figure things out, get those rotations that I mentioned, but also just get into the rhythm of being an NBL head coach. Sam Meninga, I don't think needs too much description. The best Kiwi player on the roster has been beyond after PJC. He's been their next best player. Like he's been superb. It's beyond a breakout season. Had a career high 25 points against Melbourne last night on Monday. Superb. Like he's scoring from multiple levels. He's shooting 3-pointers. He's doing big work in the paint. He's defending well. He's just generally playing fantastic. Like he outplayed Rob Lowe in that game against Melbourne. So that's a pretty pretty big tick in the favor of Sam Meninga. He's been superb. And the other thing, the last thing I'm going to throw out there is, as much as I have been critical, and I think think the stuff stacks up when you look at stats about the obsession with the Nick stars. Kareem Lopez might be the best one they've had. He looks kind of amazing. He's out there in double doubles, and he doesn't look, at 17 years old, he does not look out of place at all. That doesn't look like they're having to sort of massage a role for him into the on the court as it has been, into lineups like has been the case with previous Nick stars. He's just turned up and immediately seems like he's actually good enough to be not just a rotation player, but a really effective rotation player. Like he's going to maybe just keep Mojave King down in the rotation a little bit because of what he's doing out here. Like Kareem Lopez is kind of awesome. Kind of think this is their best next star by a fair distance, and he's actually, because he's so young, he's not even draft eligible after the season. He's going to do 2 years with the Breakers. That seems like a useful thing as well. There's a couple years of getting to see Mexico's future greatest ever basketballer potentially. I don't know. I don't know what the Mexican history of NBA players is, but Kareem Lopez is absolutely going to join them. Like you look at the guys who've come through the Breakers in the past and gone on to make the NBA, sweet as, but this guy, if he's already better than them now, he's going to be better than them even more so in the future. He's going to be a very good NBA player at this trajectory. He's contributing to these wins as well. He did like 17 and 10, I think, against Melbourne, back-to-back double doubles actually. Like, yeah, Kareem Lopez might actually be that good. So there's a few little things I'm trying to figure out about the Breakers, and a few things that seem to have, I don't know, crystallized since the start of the season. And yeah, it's a bit of an experience because I didn't see this coming.
The Breakers are away to Tasmania this Saturday. Tasmania,
I think they've got 5 away games in a row now. So
yep. Tasmania is second to last. They are 3-7, one of 2 teams that are 3-7. So one would imagine the best team in the NBL will beat one of the worst teams in the NBL, and we'll tap in with some more basketball next week. 2 things that I want to say, just because these are like plant your flag moments for the niche cache. I am always of the belief that if you're going to say this is the greatest player, the greatest win, the greatest moment, you need to have every single one in contention throughout history for me to take you seriously. So if you're like me, under the age of 50, and you're saying that this is the Blackcaps' greatest ever test win, you need to be able to rattle off the other great test wins for New Zealand. Like, I can't take you seriously if you don't have every single epic win. If you don't go through history and say, this player did this, this player did this, this player did this, and this player did this, I don't care what you're saying about the greatest. Now, when someone like Ian Smith is saying that this is a great Blackcaps test win, test series win, the greatest moment, I'm going to take him seriously because, all due respect to Ian Smith, he's a bit old, and he has a lot of experience tracking New Zealand cricket test victories. But there's like, it's something all sports. Like we would never say this is the greatest. And if you're going to say that, I'm going to ask you to list off all the other greatest moments. So you better be prepared. If you're coming at me in this niche cast conversation and you're saying it's the greatest, I expect you to list off whatever Bert Sutcliffe did back in the day. You need to be able to list off whatever Richard Hadley was doing. You need to tell me about the greatest test wins when the Blackcaps were going somewhere else in the world on a boat for 6 months. So if you're ever going to say that something is the greatest, you better know how it ranks in the full pantheon of great sporting moments. Because I can't take you seriously. If you're 25 years old saying that something is the greatest, you better be well tuned in with your history, because you've got no idea what was happening in 1940. The other thing, the Blackcaps win over India was a shock. That was truly shocking. I was shocked that the Blackcaps won 3-0. Tonga beating the Kiwis was not a shock. I don't even think it was an upset. So if we're going to say that something is shocking, you better be shocked. Now, this is all semantics. This is all me just observing how people discuss matters and planting my flag for the niche cache. Like the Blackcaps lost 2-0 in Sri Lanka. They'd been down in Test cricket for a couple of years after winning the World Test Championship in 2021. They'd had a disastrous T20 World Cup just recently. Then they beat India 3-0 in India. That is shocking. At the start of the Pacific Championship, everyone looked at the squads and was like, wow, there's so many players for New Zealand missing. Oh my gosh, like what's the halves combination being? Who's all these randoms who have been selected? What's going on? This is terrible for International Rugby League because there's so many players out missing. If we're saying that, and Tonga has a experienced International Rugby League team, 4 players who played at the 27 World Cup against New Zealand, Jason Taumalolo, Saliva Havili, Tuilola Hia, Daniel Tupou. They all played in 2017. There's a bunch of players who have played 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tests. Most notably, Isaiah Katoa, who I believe has played, let me pull it up to make sure. I think he's played 9 tests for Tonga. 8 tests for Tonga. Isaiah Katoa
9 next week.
He played at the 22 World Cup. So 3 years ago, whatever, he was playing for Tonga. He's not inexperienced. He's a young halfback, but he's not inexperienced because he's played twice as many tests as Leo Thompson. Isaiah Katoa has played 8 tests for Tonga. Griffin Neem and Matthew Tomoko have only played 5. Who else has played 5? Nathan Cleary has played 5 tests for Australia. Katoa is young, but he is not inexperienced. So you've got an experienced international team in Tonga coming up against an inexperienced New Zealand team that is basically made up of second-tier players, emerging international players. The most emerging player for Tonga isn't emerging because he's already played 8 tests. Not to mention that Isaiah Katoa is a better halfback right now than Sean Johnson. And Isaiah Katoa and Lolohea is a better halves combination than Sean Johnson and Shans Nickel-Crockstar, because Shans Nickel-Crockstar didn't kick the ball in 2 tests. None of that makes New Zealand favourites. Tonga lost 5 tests in a row, and that was the only thing that was like dubious about what they were doing. But those 5 tests are part of like experience. That's a tour to England playing 3 tests together. That's a lot of adversity that the same group of players went through. Their combinations, they were battle hardened, they were experienced, and they were playing at Mount Smart in front of the Red Sea. Nothing about what Tonga did against New Zealand was shocking. It wasn't an upset. It was a really good Tongan team beating a less good New Zealand Kiwis team. We'll get deeper into that, but I just have, we've got to give some respect to what Tonga's doing. They are an experienced international rugby league team that was comfortable in that arena, and you would know Tonga playing at Mount Smart is different gravy. It's a different beast. Isaiah Katoi's already played 8 tests. Most of those Tongan players have played at least 5 tests. They are ready for what that environment at Mount Smart was. As good as the young Kiwis were and are, they were playing their first game in front of that type of crowd, in that type of arena. So I just had to put that out there. Got a bit worked up, and now I'll just bring it down a tier because the Blackcaps just swept India 3-0. And it was, I don't know if it's the greatest. I need Francis Payne on that. I need Ian Smith. I need Jeremy Coney. I need Brian Waddle to tell me if it was the greatest or not. All I can tell you is how I felt. And I had fun watching Tonga versus New Zealand. That was exceptional rugby league, and that's what I love about the Pacific Championships. And I had fun watching the Blackcaps destroy India. Highly pleasurable experience. Let's just zone in on some specifics for the Mumbai test. Because India, in their wisdom, they dished us up a seaming track in Bangalore. Not too hot, seaming conditions, we roll you for 46, we win the test. That's all good. We've talked about it. Then we go to Pune, and India's like, nah, we need more spin, and we need it to be hotter. It's like, okay, cool, fair play. That's what you should do. And we beat you. Talked about that before. Then we go to Mumbai, and it's even hotter, and it's even more spinny. We talked about this on Thursday or some in previous podcasts about comparing it to New Zealand and New Zealand conditions for touring teams, the Bangladesh series in recent years where they won in favourable conditions at Bay Oval. Then we took them to Hagley where it's seaming around. Status quo. The Blackcaps playing in Mumbai is the equivalent of Bangladesh, India, Sri Lanka or Pakistan playing in Dunedin, where it might be 12 degrees and it's nipping around all over the show. These are two extremes. Freezing cold and seam, stinking hot and spin. And guess what happened in Mumbai? The Blackcaps won. Will Young, 71 runs. Daryl Mitchell, 82 runs. With the ball, Ajaz Patel, 5 wickets. Second innings, Will Young, 51 runs. Couple of contributions that we'll get into in a bit. And then to wrap it all up, Ajaz Patel, 6 wickets. Glenn Phillips, 3 wickets. What have your, what caught your eye? What was some nitty gritty? That was a couple of D's in there, nitty gritty. What was some of the nitty gritty from the third test in Mumbai before we go bigger picture?
Nitty gritty. Well, there was nothing but grittiness about the way the Blackcaps batted. Even when they were slogging, even when Glenn Phillips is coming in and trying to smack some boundaries, that was gritty in its own way because that wasn't Glenn Phillips trying to take the piss. That was Glenn Phillips being like, this wicket is a minefield and we need a certain amount of runs here. I'm going to go and try and score those runs and give this team a little bit of a boost. And Daryl Mitchell batted like that in both innings, and Will Young batted incredibly well in both innings. I mean, the way Daryl Mitchell went in the first innings was like, leading up to the tea break, he looked like he might just expire on the ground.
He was in pain. He was in pain.
He was almost in so much pain, it looked like he didn't feel anything anymore. Like he was numb to the pain. He was just on the verge of like death, like they're gonna have to dig a hole for him in the outfield or something and bury him. He didn't look like he would survive it, let alone keep batting. I don't
I
know what he
did
did at the tea break, but he sharpened himself up
like Will Young also like he was pale, and I remember
and
like
sweating buckets. Like
Daryl Mitchell like visibly looked like he was in pain, like all his muscles were tensing up. Like he had like a grisly look. He was like gritting his teeth at the non-strikers end. I was like, bro, you're not like that's Mumbai. That's what India dished up so we wouldn't sweep them, and we did sweep them. But just before Will Young got out, I was like, bro, is he okay?
I thought that for several times about a few different batters. It was like that's it just yeah, it was very much a do what you got to do kind of test match. It wasn't one where you're going to go out there and score a flashy 100 that's going to boost your average. It was just like stay in, score some runs somehow, keep running those singles and those twos, even though it physically hurts to move. Like the that was the thing that was sticking the most about Daryl Mitchell is like even when he's on the verge of faint, I'm like, well, he can probably still slug a six, but how's he gonna like? It was even running quick, like there were no quick singles. There wasn't really an option, but like even just running a gentle single to a ball that's rolling out to the boundary looked like is he gonna get run out? Like is he gonna make it to the other side? It was like this is incredible, incredible stuff. Let alone the fact that like my favorite image of the whole test match was the deck chairs and the umbrella drinks break. Like the first drinks break on day one, I think they just brought out like ice packs or something. In the second drinks break, they bring out the ice packs, but they also have umbrellas. In the third drinks break, they got ice packs, umbrellas, and chairs, little white plastic chairs, like the old the party favorites. It was I mean, hey, like credit to for thinking on your feet and coming up with solutions in real time. That stuff is awesome. But I've never seen that before. Like, as far
It's
as there's a lot of things about this series that we've never seen before, most of them to do with the results and New Zealand winning in India. Never seen umbrellas on a cricket field for drinks break before. On day one, and the Black Caps still won that test match.
that's Kiwi ingenuity. That's the small
Yes.
advantage that was evident throughout the whole series, like the fitness, the tactics, the plans, and the ingenuity. Like Tom Latham kept saying, we got to adapt. We adapt to conditions, and they adapted to conditions by, okay, first drinks break, they only need this. Second drinks break, they need a bit more. Third drinks break, we got to go all in because these lads are buggered.
I mean, even India had they followed suit as well. I don't know whose idea it was. It was probably just the ground staff or something
No, it
like
was
that.
definitely
Here,
a
take these
Kiwis idea.
umbrellas.
Definitely a Kiwis idea.
Well, definitely a Kiwis idea. Then we'll go with that. And in that case, India copied them. India brought out the umbrellas as well. They needed the umbrellas, so that paints a picture about what they were dealing with. However, India may have copied that, but they definitely didn't copy the grittiness. Like what was obvious in the way that they had batted, well, throughout the series. Their batting was piss poor, like frankly. Like they lacked the type of grit and fight that the Black Caps were able to produce, most notably in this third test, but in phases throughout the whole series. And there were only a few guys for India who felt like that was the case. And usually it wasn't because they were sitting in and grinding, it was because they were counterattacking. It was Jaiswal and Rishabh Pant and a little bit of Safraz and, well, a lot of Safraz, but in the first test, not so much afterwards. Like these were aggressive counterattacking measures. They never looked like they could grind out a session and just like get through without losing a couple extra wickets or just hang in there, hang tight, which is what they needed in the final innings there. Like it was chasing 150 odd. you need to be hitting boundaries because that's how you're going to get that scoreboard up. But you also don't need to you need to be selective about it. The way that Daryl Mitchell was throughout this test, I thought was quite fantastic how he went about it. Even Will Young, like Will Young had a charged down the ground and hit a few lovely shots himself over the top. He picked his moments nicely. India did not pick their moments at any point. And it, I mean, I was going to say it wasn't pretty to see, but it kind of was because I was just sitting there trying to see AJ Patel take a bunch of wickets. Well, Virat Kohli, great man Virat Kohli, right? I think people realize he hasn't been quite nearly the same player in the last 3 or 4 years of Test cricket, but still. Which country do you reckon Virat Kohli has the worst Test average against of the ones he's played against? So obviously no Pakistan. So.
Just on Pakistan, because I was watching the Australia versus Pakistan ODI series, and I think it was might have been Wasim Akram, and he was talking about Pakistan. He's like, yeah, we're just a small country, and then I checked their population; they got 250 million people.
Yeah,
so
it's not a small country.
I'm going to say that the country that Virat Kohli has his worst Test batting average is against the smallest Test playing nation in the world, a country with 5 million that continuously performs. Or it's just the best sporting nation in the world. Like, let me just say it like that. Correct.
Virat Kohli's best Test average is 67 against Sri Lanka. He averages 54 against South Africa. He's in the 47 to 48 range against Bangladesh, West Indies, and Australia. Big drop of 5 runs between Australia to get to England in second worst. 5 runs per average. Averages 42.36 against England. Almost as big a drop to drop another 4 runs to get to New Zealand, where he averages 38.36 from 27 innings against the Blackcaps. Like, that's nearly 10 runs worse than what he averages against Australia.
There were many funny moments for Kiwi cricket fans, maybe the Virat Kohli run-outs and all sorts of other mishaps. None quite like Akash coming out to bat, didn't like his bat, so he got his bat changed, and then he got run out without facing a ball. I thought that was a bit of a giggle. Shout out to him. And then we also had Mohammad Siraj. That followed Mohammad Siraj coming out as a night watchman and reviewing a plum LBW. Like, to be honest, these are some details. Like, obviously, the Akash thing is just a bit weird. Like, you're changing your bat just to get run out. That's pure. It's pure number 11 things, but he wasn't the number 11. Mohammad Siraj, night watcher, was the number 11. So just putting your number 11 batter as the night watcher, that's weird. And then using your number 11 batter, your number 11 batter as a night watcher using a review, that's also weird. And to me, that's part of the package that I was talking about last week, where the Blackcaps, Tom Latham said after the test, like, nothing really changed from Sri Lanka. They played some good cricket, they lost, blah, blah, blah. I was like, bruh, you were the change. You weren't captain.
It's literally changed the captain between those two series. It's a pretty big change.
And I don't want to poo-poo Tim Southee, because I like whatever reason, I wasn't working with Tim Southee, and that's all right. Like, just repeating myself at the moment, but like he contributed to this Test series victory, and I like Tim Southee as a cricketer. The team is just looks different under Tom Latham. Everything about them looks different. Maybe it's not necessarily Tom Latham, the captain. Maybe it's the soul searching and the reviews they had to do after the Sri Lankan performance. But this is a team that has taken on the persona of Tom Latham, like crafty, gritty, tactical, like big efforts in the field. So I like that, but at the same time, India have undergone a change as well with Gautam Gambhir coming in as coach. He took over from Rahul Dravid, And like the details in India's performance, they don't reflect well on the coach at all. Like they are team culture, like fundamentals, intangibles. Those are the things that India sucked at. And they were the areas that New Zealand excelled in. And I believe the changes in the New Zealand captaincy and the changes in the Indian coach, I think that like tells the story of where these two teams are at. Like, well, one other thing I'm thinking about is like the Blackcaps' fitness, because it's evident in the batters. Will Young faced 138 deliveries in the first innings. Daryl Mitchell faced 129. I think they were buggered after 20 deliveries each. And like whether it was Devon Conway, Rachin Ravindra, Ish Sodhi, who didn't bowl a whole lot in the test, took a key wicket of Rishabh Pant in the first innings, but didn't bowl a whole lot. Those dudes had to keep showing up in the field. They had to keep chasing the ball to the boundary. And I've found some clarity because like whether it's the drop goals in rugby league, like setting up for the drop goal. I saw it a little bit with England versus the All Blacks, like setting up for the drop goal, winning moments. It was the NPC final a few weeks ago. Drop goals just vanished in the final minutes. Fielding mishaps, drop catches. Those things happen when you're tired. Like it's hard to set up for a drop goal in rugby league with precision and clinical execution when you're buggered. That's why the best halfbacks make it look so easy, because they have the clarity of mind and the fitness to get through the process and execute the drop goal with ease. Like, yeah, you might drop a catch in the 5th hour of play when it's 40 degrees. Like, that's going to happen. But when you're watching cricket, like, catches win matches, so they're going to overanalyze the catch and say what a key moment it is. It's like, yeah, I don't know, he's probably buggered. No, he's tired. It's hard to stay focused and take those moments. But overall, I thought the Blackcaps' fitness was a key factor in this victory, because they had to play the long game in the second innings as well. Like India were only chasing 147 runs. Rishabh Pant was going all right, but the Blackcaps finished that innings stronger. They did take catches in their final innings. We've got catches for Phillips, Mitchell, Blundell took a couple, Ravindra, Will Young took a nice little diver at short leg. Will Young, who spent the most time at the batting crease, was under the lid most of the time in the field. He saved his best catch for the second to last catch of the series. And this is what I love about the Blackcaps, is we've talked about it a lot, like the fielding, the tactics, planning, preparation, all that stuff, but it's also the fitness. And it's something that you see a lot now with Chris Donaldson just embedded as the trainer. His stuff is cricket focused. His strength and fitness is designed for cricket. And he was a former sprinter. Olympian, maybe, Commonwealth Games sprinter for New Zealand.
Definitely Com Games, yeah.
So he comes from an athletics background, but he's put his expertise into cricket, and he's been in cricket for a long time. So any new player who comes into the Blackcaps gets fitter, they get stronger. And that's probably my favorite thing about this Test Series victory, was the adversity they faced with the conditions, and how their fitness helped ride that wave of really difficult conditions, but also riding the wave of when India did score runs, when India did take wickets, the Blackcaps were still capable of playing a longer game than India.
And that fielding goes beyond the catches too. Like the catches are the bit catches win matches, so that's like the thing that stands out. But like well, they they successfully defended a fourth innings chase of like it was 147, 148, something like that, like slightly under 150. And when that's the case, it's not just about like you have to take your catches because there's not enough time for there to be more chances, although there kind of was on this pitch, like kind of chances every over almost. But you also like you can't even afford misfields. Like every run is so crucial. They were talking a lot on the radio commentary about like there's a phrase they kept using called the currency of runs. It's like in some games runs are worth more in different situations depending on how many runs are in the test match overall and whatever. And this was a low scoring test match, so the currency of runs, like every run was crucial. There were no major sloppy moments that I can think of. There weren't dumb overthrows or like guys unaware in the field or any of those kind of things. Like they were just locked in and they went out there and they say bowled themselves to victory. But that sort of makes it sound like it only gives the credit to the bowlers. It was a team effort, just kind of I don't know, like looming over India and allowing them to make the mistakes and them to succumb to the pressure. And it was it was beautiful to see because these are things that we've been lamenting the lack of in Blackcaps for a little while. And it's not just that they were back here, it's like they were back here and weaponized those ideas. So just brilliant stuff. And then even just like the idea of they'd already won the series and they still put in that performance to win that third test when they didn't have to. Like they'd have got away with still everyone would be talking about what a great success it was if they'd come away with a 2-1 series victory. I was kind of preparing myself for that mentally as the third game got underway anyway. So that stuff is just fantastic. Just a real team performance, and I think you can see that across the whole series, right? Because like first test match, Rachin Ravindra scores runs, Matt Henry takes a bunch of wickets. Second test match, you got a couple different guys scoring. No one got a century after that, after Ravindra, but you got a couple different guys scoring 50s there. And Conway might have. What was that the game when Latham as well? One of them at some point. Don't think it was Conway. I think Conway was the first one. These
Tom
all
Latham scored
beat India
runs.
three times in a row. Yeah, I think
Tom Latham scored runs. Mitchell Santner took wickets, but like.
And then the third test is Ajaz Patel and Will Young and a bit of Daryl Mitchell. Like these are different names each time, right? Like it's the contributions across the board from everyone stepping up at various times and everyone contributing to what they did.
Just going back to the third test thing, that's a World Test Championship wrinkle.
Yeah, it is.
The test mattered in the context of the World Test Championship, but I think the Blackcaps, they got a whiff of blood in the water. I think they smelt weakness. And we were scared of India, as most people are when you're playing against India in India. But I noticed the difference in the two teams in the first test, like the Latham captaincy, the Gambia coaching stuff like that. That I viewed that as important because it was evident in the body language. It was evident in everything the players and as individuals and a collective in the team, everything they were doing made me think that like India's a bit different under Gambia. The Blackcaps are a bit different under Latham. And that's from me watching in Aotearoa through Matali. The Blackcaps were there. They were up close and personal with the opposition. And if you have a bit of success, that gives you confidence, but it also helps you establish like, okay, how's the opposition feeling? What are they doing? And I think the Blackcaps got a whiff of weakness. I think the Blackcaps could smell blood in the water, and that's why they kept hammering. That's why they kept persisting with the long game, with the endurance, with the grind, and executing their skills, because I think they could feel that they were on top, whether it was like from the first test or the first day. where they rolled India for 46. Either way, they felt like they were on top. There's, to your point about the team-wide contributions, like it was Seam in the first test, Santner in the second test, Patel in the third test. And as you said, Bloke scored runs throughout the series. We had 6 different players score a 50. Ravindra, century 50, Will Young 250s, Devon Conway 250s. They were the batters who scored 250 plus scores in the series. Devon Conway scored 91 in the first test, 76 in the second test. So he was the dude who scored runs in the second test with Latham. Mitchell scored 150, Latham scored 150, Southey scored 150. Those are important, but the currency of runs.
Phillips have like a 48 not out at one point as well.
Yeah. But the currency of runs idea is most evident in the small contributions. Daryl Mitchell scored 150 in the first innings of the third test, but he scored 10 runs. He scored over 10 runs, over 15 runs in every innings that he batted. 18, 82, 21. Will Young cashed in the third test with 250s, but he had 10 plus runs in every innings. 33, 48, 18, 23, 71, 51. Glenn Phillips scored over 10 runs in 4 or 5 innings, and he hit 9 runs in the other innings. So in a series where they only scored 300 plus runs once, New Zealand did. Both teams only scored 300 plus runs once each in the whole series. They scored 400 in the first test. The benchmark of like run scoring production drops. So when it's really hard to bat, who's scoring 10 plus runs? If 10 blokes score 10 plus runs or 10 runs, you get 100. And that gives you the wiggle room for other dudes to score 30, 40, 50, 60, 70. That's how you get to 200 runs. And 200 runs in these conditions, as we've seen, is highly effective, highly competitive and winnable totals. So there were a bunch of dudes who did that. Mitchell and Young were the dudes who scored 10 plus runs in every innings. But we also had Latham scored 10 plus runs in 4 of his 6 innings. Ravindra scored 30 plus runs in 3 of his 6 innings. Conway scored 10 plus runs in 5 of 6 innings. So those dudes, if I'm using the 10 run benchmark, those dudes succeeded more than they failed. In the context of team-wide contributions. And that's how the Blackcaps love to play cricket. It's not Kane Williamson scores all the runs because he wasn't playing. Ravindra started on fire, didn't finish on fire. So blokes had to score 10 runs, 15 runs, 20 runs just to stack up their totals. It's similar with the wickets. Like, Mitchell Santner played 1 test. He scored 37 runs and took 13 wickets. That's efficient. That's contributing to a win. Glenn Phillips took a wicket every innings he bowled. All 5, sorry. 1 wicket, 2 wicket, 1 wicket, 1 wicket, 3 wickets. Matt Henry. He took 8 wickets in that first test in favourable conditions, and he took a wicket in each innings in Mumbai. It was only 1 wicket, but given the roles seam bowling played in Mumbai, Matt Henry dismissed Rohit Sharma and Rohit Sharma. Matt Henry ensured that Rohit Sharma didn't impact this game. Ajaz Patel took 2 or more wickets in 4 of his 5 innings. Southey took 1 wicket in 3 of his 4 innings. Again, these aren't like massive hauls. The dudes did take massive hauls. Will O'Rourke, Matt Henry in the first test, Santner in the second test, Patel in the third test. But there was just like, dudes just found a way to take 1 wicket. Dudes found a way to score 10 runs. And when you're dealing in tough conditions, when you're dealing in small margins of the highest level of Test cricket, or the highest level of cricket, those small contributions add up. It's the same, chasing the ball to the boundary to save 2 runs. Working hard to turn a double to a single. Those are the things. Scoring 10 runs, taking 1 wicket. Let's see what the Indian seamers did in Mumbai. Siraj didn't take a wicket. Akashdeep took 1 wicket in each innings, so shout out to him. But Matt Henry bowled 3 overs in the second innings and 8 overs in the first innings. Will O'Rourke bowled 2 overs. That's it. That's the seam bowling contributions for the Blackcaps in the third test. But Matt Henry took a wicket in each test, in each innings. Each showed he only bowled 7 overs, but he took the wicket apart. I can't go past Glenn Phillips though. Like taking a wicket in every innings and almost hitting that 10-run benchmark in all 5 innings he batted, that's impressive. Not quite as impressive as Mitchell and Will Young hitting 10+ runs in every innings, but, well, it was, because he took a wicket in every innings. Like, this is just something I've conjured up. That 10-run benchmark and consistency of a wicket, or consistency of wickets, plural. In a series like this where it's really hard for the seamers and it's the run scoring is lower, those are things that help you win. And like, I'm not going to go forward keeping track of who scored 10+ runs and took a wicket, because I think it's kind of unique to a series like this, but it is a detail. When you're talking about team-wide contributions, you can go, yeah, test by test, different dudes contributed, because it was like the seamers, it was Ravindra, then it was Santner and Latham and Conway, then it was Young and Mitchell and Patel, Ajaz, Rachin. But Will Young, Will Young and Daryl Mitchell, they were 18 runs plus in every innings. So they cashed in the third test, but they scored more than 18 runs or more in every innings of the whole series. That's like, there's team-wide contributions in a series, but then there's like a detail within the team-wide contributions in a series where it's like, okay, what were your small contributions that, when packaged together with everyone else's small contributions, stack up to sweeping India in India?
Yeah, like when everyone's worst innings and, with bat and ball are still positively adding to the sum of what the team is doing overall, you're in a pretty good place. Because, yeah, like you say, those are the like foundational elements that allow someone like Will Young or Daryl Mitchell in the most recent test match to then, so they go a little bit bigger, and then you add those up together, and then you're like, this. It's kind of the same concept as another, what was formerly forgotten art of Blackcaps winning test cricket, is just being able to tally up like 50 runs per innings from batters 8, 9, 10, 11. And that might be from one guy slugging 50 himself, or it might be just from a bunch of different 10 to 15 kind of contributions. This series was, currency of runs. The series wasn't allowing for that type of stuff, but I would be absolutely stunned if we added together the sort of like the tail end of contributions from both teams, and the Blackcaps weren't significantly ahead of India in terms of what their lower order. With India, it felt like if you get that kind of, it was usually Rishabh Pant who was in this partnership. There's always that one where it's like, maybe it's Pant and Jadeja or Pant and Sarfaraz or something like that. There's that one partnership where it's like, well, if we break this, might just take the last 4 or 5 wickets for 20 runs. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of resistance coming in after. And generally speaking, there wasn't. Whereas the Blackcaps did, like, even in the very last partnership, like AJ Patel smacking a six, like the huge runs, really important runs. He got out trying to hit another one, but like these little, even it might not even be runs. It might be if you're Will O'Rourke at the other end, just being able to stay not out. And he's
4 not
actually,
outs.
he doesn't look like he doesn't look like he can score a lot of runs. He might be our most number 11 for quite a while, but he also didn't get dismissed much. He was able to like
Well, like
sneak a little single into the offside and get these 1 and 2s not outs. Like those are fine. If you don't get out, that's fine.
he's a 23-year-old seamer. Like like who cares about his batting?
Well, I care about his batting when he's able to be part of like a 20-run partnership at the end, by
Yeah,
just hanging in there and not getting out. He doesn't have to get in there and slug Trent Bolte type innings.
but
They're
like
different players, right?
you can't say he's the most number 11 batter we've had in a long time. Like he's
Well,
a
we're coming off of the best number 11 in history, so I guess
I don't
there's a
like if we're talking about this, I don't think Trent Bolt was the best number 11 when he was 23 years old.
yeah. Well, that's probably fair.
Like I don't know, Will O'Rourke, Test batting, he's got 9 not outs in 12 innings. I wish I did that. So I'm not here to talk any shit about Will O'Rourke's batting. Like he's got 9 not outs in 12 innings. That's fine for someone who's 23 years old and is also averaging 19.4 with the ball. Like we can account for that. Let's talk about the golden generation. Because I remember when, and again, if we're going, okay, this is the greatest, Test moment for the Blackcaps in New Zealand cricket. Well, we did win the first World Test Championship, like that did happen, and that's a major ICC tournament. Like this is a fantastic achievement. It's a Test series in India. Like we have won the World Test Championship. Like that's, but I'm not going to argue. Like whatever you want to think. But my point is that we did win the World Test Championship. We have done some crazy stuff in cricket while also grinding through some low points since the 2020 pandemic. But when the Blackcaps won the World Test Championship, that was all about the golden generation. It was like, Kane Williamson, Ross Taylor, Southey, Wagner, Bolt, like all these dudes, Watling. The golden generation of Blackcaps cricketers finally had their moment. And it was meant to be the end. Like that was meant to be the end of the golden generation. Only 2 players from that World Test Championship final played in Mumbai.
Tom Latham would be one, and Patel didn't play that series. Devon Conway would have played as well. Yeah, the 2 openers.
They were the only players from the World Test Championship final that played in Mumbai. Tim Southey played in the World Test Championship and played 2 tests in the series. You compare that to India. India had Rohit Sharma, Shubman Gill, Virat Kohli, Rishabh Pant, Ravi Jadeja, Ravi Ashwin. They played in Mumbai, and then you've got Bumrah, who didn't play in Mumbai, played in the final like Southey. So that was like the World Test Championship was meant to be the end of the golden generation. And a new Blackcaps team went to India and swept India. None of the bowlers played in the World Test Championship final. None of the bowlers in the Mumbai Test played in the World Test Championship final. The engine room of the batting Williamson, Taylor, Nichols, Watling, de Gronholm, Jamison. None of those dudes were there in Mumbai. None of those dudes played any cricket of this tour. And I've been of the belief that the emerging cricketers in New Zealand are really good. And throughout this low patch of Test cricket, Will O'Rourke, Rachin Ravindra, Glenn Phillips, they have been the best players for the Blackcaps. And now you've got Mitchell. Blundell didn't have his best series, but he got the job done, so shout out to him. And add in everyone else. Will Young, Matt Henry, Ajaz Patel, Mitchell Santner. Like, this is a new Blackcaps team that has achieved some level, depending on your historical facts and what you view as most important. They have achieved a great thing, one of the greatest things, if not the greatest thing, if you can bring me the facts. But it was a completely different team that won the World Test Championship final just 3 years ago.
Yeah, first time that the Blackcaps, well, first time India have ever been swept in India. First time, and I think only the third time in history India have not won a single Test match in a series at home. Blackcaps have had a lot of sweeps in their time, but they've all been 2-game sweeps, and only 3 have been away from home. The other 2 were in Zimbabwe. This one is a 3-test sweep in India. So a lot of unprecedented stuff going down. I did just quickly check Trent Boult's record as well, and he was 23 years old in his 4th Test innings where he had 33 not out against South Africa with 3 sixes. So he might have been that good from the get-go.
Yeah, fair play.
He was 24, I think, when he scored an unbeaten 50 at number 11 in Bangladesh as well. So, he...
Righto,
fair play to Trent Boult. He was the best for the reason, He's some of those innings were at number 10 though.
How many not outs did he have?
11. Let's see.
Give me the ratio.
Ignoring the scores, the start of his Test career goes not out, out, not out, not out.
No, just
not
career.
Out, not out.
Career not outs to innings batted.
Okay, 46 not outs out of 94. So just under 50%.
Right, I'll keep that in mind because Will O'Rourke's above 50%. Like, he's not.
That sort of makes sense if you're if you're batting at number 11 mostly, you're only involved in one partnership, right? So either you get out or the other guy gets out. It should be about 50%, right? So if you're above 50% into the number 11, that's good. That's top stuff.
We don't have time for this, but very quickly, do you have Trent Boult's early bowling stuff? And as you looked up that, the Blackcaps, they now have a series against Sri Lanka, T20s and ODIs. Now, I wrote about the Ford Trophy this morning. I'll drop some facts in a jiffy, but the emerging Blackcaps who have been playing Ford Trophy, who are going to tour Sri Lanka in that series, Josh Clarkson, he's averaging 9.2 with the bat, 43 with the ball. Dean Foxcroft, he's averaging 11.8 with the bat, 29.2 with the ball. Mitch Hay, tough start to the summer. He's averaging 5.5. Nathan Smith is averaging 22 with the bat, strike rate of 85, and he's averaging 20.3 with the ball. We've also got the one and only Zach Folks. He's averaging 43.5 with the bat, 13.8 with the ball. And there's one other bloke I need to check in with, Tim Robinson, one of Wellington's best batters to start the season. He's got 100 runs at an average of 50. How did Trent Boult start his bowling career?
Well, how many Test matches has O'Rourke played? 6 or 7?
7, I believe. 7.
Right.
Yep.
So after 7 Test matches, Trent Boult had taken 19 wickets, best of 3 for 29 at an average of 35.89. He did take a 4 against Sri Lanka in his eighth Test match, so that picked the average up. But even where are we? 14 Test matches into his career, he was still had an average over 30. He got it under, then it went back over 30 after 18 Test matches. Then it started to steadily come down, 27s, 28s, 26. Steadying on at about where are we? 27 now, so 27 and a half. So yeah, he wasn't doing what Will O'Rourke did with the ball at the start of his career. That's certainly true.
Can you? Okay, so
Took hold on, his first five for Will O'Rourke, who already has about 3 or 4 fifers. Trent Bolt's first fifer came in his 13th match.
Okay.
6 for 68 against England.
Trent Bolt's bowling average after 7 tests, what was that?
That was 35.89, 19 wickets.
Will O'Rourke, 7 tests, 26 wickets, averaging 19.42. Trent Bolt, after 19 tests, what was his record?
Trent Bolt, after 19 Test matches, 67 wickets, 26.92.
Kyle Jamieson,
the 19th Test match, he took 10 for 80 against the West Indies match figures. So
that's cool.
That was a good one.
19 tests for Kyle Jamieson, 80 wickets at an average of 19.7. So if we're talking about a golden generation, Kyle Jamieson and Will O'Rourke have had better starts to their Test career than Trent Bolt by fairly significant margins.
Undeniably so.
Tim Southey, can you just pull up Tim Southey while I blabble on about Ford Trophy? So Ford Trophy,
I can do that.
Auckland are top of the table, 4-1. Canterbury are 3-1 in second. Wellington 2-2. Otago 2-3. CD, ND 1-3. The best performers in the Ford Trophy. One of my favourite youngsters, we've got Zach Folks, Luke Georgeson's doing some great stuff. Curtis Heafy, youngster for CD. He's doing some good stuff as well. He is second for runs as a 21-year-old, averaging 69 century, half century so far after 5 games. Best batter, Chad Bowes, built on that double banger. Leading run scorers, we got Bowes, Heafy, Brad Schmullian for CD, Jack Boyle for CD, Dale Phillips averaging 44.8, Henry Cooper, Michael Sklanders, Will O'Donnell, Luke Georgeson. Luke Georgeson, 175 runs, average of 35, strike rate of 94, and Georgeson also has 5 wickets at an average of 19. Shout out to the Big Donny sluggers. Chad Bowes, strike rate of 150. Brett Hampton, strike rate of 116. Lou Johnson, another youngster, he's got a strike rate of 102 with a 50. Max Chu, he's got a strike rate of 103. And Tom Bruce, strike rate of 130. Best bowlers, we have Tickner, Matt Bacon, Jimmy Neesham, Zach Falk, Scott Kugelheim, Angus McKenzie, Lockie Ferguson, Adam Milne, Peter Younghusband, Dean Foxcroft, Nick Greenwood, Simon Keane, Ray Toole, Brett Hampton, Aditya Ashok, Jaden Lennox. All of those bowlers have at least 6 wickets. The lowest average of those dudes, we've got Nick Greenwood. He's got a smaller sample size, 6 wickets at an average of 7. He's the opening batter for Wellington, who bowls a bit of off spin. Jimmy Neesham, averaging 10.3 with the ball, lower than Zach Fox's 13.8. Angus McKenzie averaging 13.1. Those are the best Ford Trophy performers. Tim Southey, 7 tests. What was Tim Southey up to?
Well, Tim Southey, who famously did take a 5 on debut against England, then didn't take a Test match in the next match, then went and played a couple games against Australia. After 7 tests, he had taken 19 wickets at 42.31. So not the prettiest. He took a little while to get going.
That's all right. I just need your facts. Tim Southey after 19 tests.
Well, in Tim Southey's 19th Test match, he took 7 for 64 against India. That took his average under 40 down to 39.84 with 53 wickets from 19 tests.
The golden generation, Tim Southey, Trent Bolt, the start of their careers were significantly worse than Kyle Jamieson and Will O'Rourke. To me, now Kyle Jamieson's always injured, so it's a bit of a wonky one, and he did play at the World Test Championship. He was in that final. He was the player of the match, I believe. But my point here is that this sums up New Zealand cricket, because Kyle Jamieson and Will O'Rourke, they're both 2 meters tall. They both hoop the ball around. They both nip the ball around, and they have had significantly better starts to their test bowling career than the two best modern bowlers for New Zealand, Trent Boult and Tim Southee. That's pretty damn impressive. The Aotearoa Derby was also very impressive, and Auckland FC were the victors. 2-0 over the Wellington Phoenix. It was a fantastic game to watch, and as I said before, it was kind of brutal. Like there were shoulder charges, a couple of high boots. Very, very enjoyable to watch. You did mention the mishap, the goalie mishap. Oluwayemi just passing it to the Auckland FC player. Who was that?
It was Jake Brimmer who scored both goals for Auckland FC.
He did, but the second goal came from someone you've been talking about for a couple of years now, Loatoma. Not to be confused with the Louis Slippers 10-pound bag, but Lewis Toomey impacted that game. Came off the bench, bit of razzle dazzle on the left wing, I believe. Got round it was a tough spot because I think it was one of the Japanese players for the Phoenix was defending. I think he found him. I think it was the striker who found himself,
Shige, I think. Yeah,
he found himself defending it right back, and Lewis Toomey took him on, and then passed it across the goal. I've got a nugget for you. Wellington Phoenix.
Do like a nugget.
In the 2023-2024 season, regular season, 27 games, the Wellington Phoenix conceded the fewest goals in the A-League, 26 goals. The only other team to concede less than 30 goals were the Central Coast Mariners on 27 goals, who finished first. Wellington Phoenix conceded the fewest goals in the A-League last season. The only team in the A-League this season, right now, who is yet to concede a goal is Auckland FC. And there is one common factor between those two bits of information. And that is our Lord and Savior, Alex Paulsen. To me that's undeniable. And I came about that because I was like, they were talking a lot about the Auckland City defense, and the Auckland City defense as a unit is good. Like, they are a good defensive team. But it's pretty obvious, considering that Alex Paulsen was a factor, a large factor, a big factor in a excellent Wellington Phoenix defense last season. You could say the best defense last season. And he's backing it up this season, because Auckland FC haven't conceded a goal. Looks like Central Coast Mariners have conceded 1 goal, but they're down in 9th, and they've got 3 draws. They are the only other team who has conceded less than 2 goals this season. Auckland FC haven't conceded a goal. There's a clear link between Alex Paulsen and really good football and defense.
That there is, and it goes beyond, because I don't think he's had to pull out the highlight saves that you saw him doing, certainly at the start of last season for the Phoenix. He hasn't had to save a penalty yet. He hasn't had to, well, I was going to say he hasn't had to face a penalty, but facing and saving penalties are the same thing for Alex Paulsen. So, but like, that just goes to show other aspects of what makes a great goalkeeper. And I think he's been extremely tidy with his feet, as we know him to be. That's not been an issue for Auckland FC. You don't build up from the back quite as much as the Phoenix do, but it's still a very easy out for those defenders. If they're under pressure, just pass it back to Paulsen, he'll deal with it. You know, he's extremely confident in those things. And the way he organizes the defense in front of him is also pretty handy. And he's just a calming presence. If you've got a goalkeeper like that, you know that you're not going to have to worry about dumb things happening, and you can just focus on what you're trying to achieve. And yeah, I think across the board though, that back four for Auckland FC, it has also, those guys have all been really good. I mean, I love seeing Nando Planaka just turn up and be like, yeah, I am one of the best defenders in the A-League from day one. It doesn't matter, because it's been a little bit hard to judge how that would go, because he's got the international experience. So you can say he's played at, big games and against very good teams. But then also, like, how do you compare this to him? Mostly, like, most of his senior club experience has actually come in the League of Ireland. It's like, well, that's a good league that produces good players, but is it like that level across the board? It's just hard to compare them, and hard to know how he would find his feet. Not been a problem. He's been great throughout. I mean, Hiroki Sakai, you kind of know what to expect. Dan Hall, you know what to expect. Proven A-League baller, that man, and Francis de Vries as well, been really good for them. They haven't changed that back four at all. I mean, they do like to do a little bit at the end of games if they're winning. Chuck on Tommy Smith for the last 2 minutes, coming in as the closer and sorting things out like that. But I mean, the defensively as a whole, that team has been superb. Hasn't conceded a goal. Hasn't even really given up that many chances. I mean, the Wellington Phoenix gave them as much trouble as anyone has. They gave them more trouble than Sydney did, aside from, Sydney did have a disallowed goal, but it was also disallowed for a reason, right? The Phoenix should have scored. There's it might have been Ishige again, or was it Nagasa? One of the Japanese guys.
Costa
had one or two as well.
Like, he got the cutback and then he just hit it one timer, but that was in the first.
Well, I'm thinking of the header as well, where he bounces. I think it was Ishige. He goes for a diving header when the ball's like at ankle height, like, stand there and kick it, bro. Like, you'll be fine. And he bounces it over the crossbar. And yeah, Costa had a couple chances as well. The Phoenix had their moments. They could have been a 2-0 win for them.
The Costa chance, like, to me, that sums up Paulsen. Paulsen doesn't need to make a tough save because he's in the right spot.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, Costa kicks it straight to him. But if you're not Alex Paulsen, you might be out of position, and then you have to, like, make a diving save. And it's like, yeah, Costa might have been able to slot it either side of him, but Paulsen's always in the right position. Paulsen's always organizing the defense. Paulsen's always composed under pressure. Like, that dude's bloody impressive. What'd you make of Tuma?
Louis Toomey. This is one of those ones where it's like, I feel a little bit vindicated when a dude comes in and does. Like, I've already had that with Liam Gillian in this team as well. So those are like the two guys who I would have said, and I think did say, like, multiple times, like, these are the first two players I would like to see signed up by Auckland FC. Like, we know they're going to go for bigger names, like, as they did. There are a few All Whites that were probably rumored from. So Cam Howison was an obvious one that they had to get on board. I sort of took those ones for granted, and we're like, yeah, but I want to see this team also sign some of the young guys who haven't had a consistent professional gig, because Toomey was in the Phoenix Academy. Didn't get to the pro ranks, but he sat on the bench once or twice, I think, for the first team. But yeah, those are the first two names I would have mentioned. Two guys who've been excellent in National League stuff for a couple of years. They did go out and sign them, and then when these guys have played, they've been really good straight away. Like, this is just it's nice and vindicating for myself, but I think more to the point, it is vindicating for, like, the caliber of Kiwi footballers. The ability, like, to say that, and these are not the first two examples that have proved this as well. The Phoenix have got a bunch of them. Even go back to someone like Roy Krishna, shows the same thing. Alex Rufer, even, like, Tim Payne, certainly. Like, the best players in the New Zealand National League are good enough to play A-League, and they proved that. Brian Kaltak, back-to-back A-League championships, like, just straight in there and winning stuff. Like, the best guys in the New Zealand National League are good enough to play A-League, and it is the same with the Women's National League as well. They're playing like Devon Jackson scored a goal on debut for Newcastle. She played for Canberra last year. She moved to Newcastle. She scored. Like the best players in these domestic leagues are good enough to play in the A-League. They're getting signed to play in the A-League, and they're really good straight off the bat, proven what we already suspected, which is that they're good enough. This is a lovely thing to see. And Louis Toomey, the latest one, he's probably more of a central attacking midfielder. He would rather have been playing in the Brimmer position, but because he's got a great first touch, great close control, sneaky dribbler, not like crazy fast or anything, but just got such good close control that he can skip past defenders. He's very clever and that kind of stuff. Direct in his own way too. Like he will take on guys. He's not afraid of doing that. He's not going to turn and pass the ball back if he's got an opportunity. And I thought first of all, just excited to see him get a debut after not featuring the first two games. As a scholarship player as well, let's not forget. But I thought when he came on, even before he set up that goal, I thought he made 3 or 4 like contributions that were smaller little things, like this is scoring 10 runs for the Blackcaps in Mumbai kind of things. Like he goes past a defender, or he holds onto the ball under pressure, or he puts across whatever it was. Like I just noticed him 3 or 4 times after he came on straight away being like, hey, that was a good impact from Toomey. Like, he did a good thing there. And he did another good thing. Okay, he set up a goal now. We're going further and beyond. But yeah, a great little contribution off the bench, getting his bang for his buck there in small minutes. But that's how you earn more minutes, is by coming on and doing that sort of thing. So love that. And that is if the scholarship guy's doing that, you've had Liam Killian on a scholarship contract as well, starting 3 games in a row. Like there's some serious depth at Auckland FC right now. I'd argue they've got more depth than the Wellington Phoenix have right now, and that's part of why they won that game, is because in a game that for 88 minutes or whatever it was, felt like a 0-0 draw, a good tactical, feisty, and not a bad 0-0 draw in any way, like a enjoyable, exciting game. There were chances, there were great, big tackles, there were great moments, but it just felt like it was going to end up as a 0-0 draw. Auckland FC got 2 goals from one substitute and assist from another substitute, right? And then won 2-0. Their bench did make the difference in that game.
And it's like, I thought the Wellington Phoenix were pretty good, but again,
they were, yeah.
To your point, as the substitutions start to roll, and like it's kind of similar to the Kiwis, you're asking emerging players to perform at their best in a elevated arena. So I don't think there's too much negativity directed from me to the Wellington Phoenix for their efforts. I think they did the best they could with where their squad and team building processes are. I just realized, looking at the A-League ladder, every team is FC, like Auckland FC, Melbourne Victory FC, Sydney FC. Like, yeah, we're playing football. You're in the A-League. We get you're a football club. I don't think you need to,
sort of goes without saying,
yeah,
right?
like it's like,
except for the Auckland FC, Sydney FC things where that's like a specific name. Fair enough. You don't have anything else to your name. You will keep that in so it sounds like a football team. Melbourne Victory FC is a waste of space. Like, you save this.
But it's every team. So I think it's a waste of space for everyone. It's like in the NRL, you've got the Melbourne Storm RLC, Rugby League Club.
Yeah.
It just doesn't make a lot of sense. But it's a football thing. The footballers, they love their FCs. They love their Uniteds and whatnot. What was I going to say? So you're big on the contracts, the scholarship contracts and everything like that. It's, to me, from the outside, it's the same as Blackcaps contracts. Like, dudes are playing for the Blackcaps without a contract. It's the same as the NRL. Everyone trips over the top 30. But dudes are playing in the NRL from outside the top 30. So I think, and they've got their development contracts. They might be a part-time in the New South Wales Cup, but they got a match payment bonus and they get promoted. Like, you're big on tracking the contract status for the Phoenix and Auckland FC. To me, it seems like the contracts are just the means to pay the player. They don't tell you anything about, well, they inform you of like rankings, because some do have scholarships and some don't, some have full-time, whatever, but it's just a means to have a bigger squad and to pay the players. So like, because as you're saying, the Auckland FC are getting strong contributions from players on the scholarship contract bracket. So it's like, well, to fans, to me, there's no difference if you're on a full-time whatever A-League contract or a scholarship contract. That is just how the club is organizing their squad, because the Warriors and the best NRL teams, the Warriors are not a best NRL team, but they are doing this. They give a lot of game time to players outside the top 30. So it's just kind of like, this is how we're building out our depth. Everyone needs some sort of contract, and we need more than 30 players. So it's just like, this is how we just organize it. But to like, again, to your point, Auckland FC, good imports. Brimmer was apparently the man last season or something.
Season before that with Melbourne
Right.
Victory, yeah, he
Yep.
was player of the entire competition, Johnny Warren medalist.
Good imports, all that stuff. But the core of Kiwi players, whew, you got Paulsen, you got Nando, Franny de Vries, Cam Howison, Gillian, Rogerson. Like, they're all just young Kiwi lads. And my observation, aside from the Paulsen defense, I think Auckland FC is their best. Sorry, and Toomey, because he just played and impacted the game. I think Auckland FC is the best when Cam Howison is a bit deeper in midfield. Because in the game against the Phoenix, Cam Howison started further up the field. And then when Brimmer came on, he went deeper in the midfield. And I think Cam Howison, A, he's a first 11 player. And B, he's better in the, like, getting deeper in the midfield where he can be a bit more creative, a bit more playmakerish, playmakey. And he can also get forward to play like a, what do you call it, the number 10 type of role. But Cam Howison, to me, he's been the most impressive because, I mean, he was just playing for Auckland City year in, year out in Aotearoa. But I've kind of enjoyed his work for Auckland FC as one of the low-key, most influential players in that team.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, he was like the best player in domestic football for about 5 years. So he's playing for Auckland City and being amazing for them. But it's not always easy to see how that would translate to the A-League because yeah, they're like the way that Auckland City play often involves a lot of just like crowding around the other team's penalty area. So if he's playing as a deeper midfielder, he's still in the attacking zone all the time. Like that's kind of the vision of Cam Howison you're a bit more used to seeing from the Auckland City stuff. And Auckland FC, it's not going to break like that for him. He's started the last two games as an attacking midfielder in that Jake Brimmer role, the role that Jake Brimmer started with. And then I think Jake Brimmer was sick last week, so couldn't play much. And then Howison just held his spot. Yeah, I think his best role might be more as an ace. So as the like midfielder who defends and attacks, is the sort of go-between where you got Verstrader as like the defensive midfielder, Gallegos currently playing that role, Howison a little further forward, but that'll become Brimmer or maybe Toomey will get some goes there at some point. You know,
but in football language, does it go 6, 8, 10? Like 6 defensive midfielder,
yeah.
8 slightly more attacking, 10 creative attacking midfielder.
Yeah, basically, you got it there. But on so yeah, like Cam Howison can cover all of those midfield spots, but he's not necessarily the first choice in any of them, but he might be the next best choice in all of them, if that makes sense. Like you're not going to play Verstrader as a number 10, you're not going to play Brimmer as a defensive midfielder, but Howison can kind of do the lot of those things. So I think he'll end up starting more games than he doesn't without necessarily being a starting player, if that makes sense. I'd like to see him at the 8 a little bit more often because I think his his passing is very good in so many ways, but he'll do the steadying possession stuff, the passing out of trouble, just being able to spot a one-time pass, move it into space somewhere else. He's also just a really creative passer, but I don't necessarily know if he's the creative passer or when he's like getting rushed up the top. So yeah, we'll see what his role develops into, but it's another example of how they've got a good squad is that they do have these players who maybe not quite as versatile as everyone is in the Wellington Phoenix team at the moment, but Auckland FC do have a lot of options for these different positions, and they are fairly like the Phoenix are quite fluid. Auckland FC seem quite structured under Steve Corica. Like the roles are the roles. If you're the left winger, you're sticking on the left wing. You're not popping up on the right side, or you're not hanging out in front and swapping around with the striker too much. Beyond just the natural stuff of how the game flows, where you might just find yourself there chasing the ball or whatever. But it's not, yeah, they're quite structured and they have options across these different positions. They have a deep squad, and the reason they have a deep squad is because they have scholarship players who are good enough to be better than scholarship players and are able to start A-League games or come off the bench and set up crucial goals.
Who was your favorite Phoenix player in the Derby?
Well, Alex Rufer, under an injury cloud all week, and then they rule him out a day before, and then on the day off, he's like, "Nah, let me at him. Let me off the chains."
That seemed more like shenanigans. That seemed like Derby
I think
antics.
there was some shenanigans, and the ruling him out aspect, I think that was a bit premature when obviously Rufer was trying to be ready, but he did. It was a real injury because he was. You saw him suffer it at the end of the Perth game. Like he was getting treatment after that game finished kind of thing. Like he was hurt. It was definitely something he was dealing with, but it's not just the fact that he played. It's how he played. It's like shrug off the injury and just be an absolute menace. Like there's a dog out there on the field chasing everyone around, hounding and just leading by example in the way that Alex Rufer does. He's it's kind of crazy to think how he's got to being this type of player where even if just a few years ago, a lot of people probably wouldn't have been too disappointed if he'd just disappeared from the team, if they hadn't been re-signed or whatever. It took him quite a while in his career to find the perfect role for him, but once he found it, he's not about to let go of that. And he is really such a crucial player for how the Phoenix play now. So big time deals there from Alex Rufer. I will say though, it warms the heart to see Marco Rojas popping up again as well. Like just a few minutes off the bench, didn't really get to do anything. I was wondering what they're going to do with him. He played as the second striker, so what Ishige was doing alongside Costa Barbarosas, but they'd kind of messed with the formation a bit by that point anyway, trying to chase goals, and then they messed with it some more, having to definitely chase goals after conceding, which led to them conceding another one. So yeah, it's still sort of up for grabs what they're going to do with Rojas, what the plan is to turn him into the most influential player for the Wellington Phoenix attack, which is what the hope was and what the hope will still be. But just to get him back on the field for that first step was pretty cool. That was nice, and I will say though that is maybe another aspect of the Auckland bench being more effective than the Phoenix bench is that even with the Phoenix had young players, the Phoenix also had returning from injury players, Kolakovsky being another one of those. So guys who weren't necessarily ready to do 30 or 40 minutes when they might have wanted to change the tempo a little bit earlier than they did. So another example there of how Auckland FC kind of had a little bit of an advantage there, but I don't think that it's an advantage that's necessarily going to carry on when they meet again in Auckland in 2 months.
The Phoenix ended up losing 2-0, but I think I was genuinely impressed with the Phoenix. As you said, like the players coming off the bench were either youngsters or they were players returning from injury. The Phoenix stayed in the contest for most of the game. The Phoenix fired a few shots. They had their attacking moments. They were able to shut down multiple Auckland FC attacks. And if you're realistic about where the Phoenix are at, in the same way I want to be realistic about where the Kiwis are at right now in 2024, like the Derby lost stings, losing to Tonga stings. But if you take a step back, you'll be like, okay, That was a decent effort from the Phoenix. They've had a decent start to the season, and we know the Wellington Phoenix, like Finn Roa Conchi, played a lot of minutes in that midfield of a derby. Like that's going to be beneficial to him. And there's like giving these Phoenix play like because there were still some youngsters in the defense.
Yeah, Matt Sheridan
Yeah,
played 62 minutes. You mentioned Conchi got 55 minutes. Stan Sutton's probably above youngster status at this stage, but yeah, there's even off the bench you had Nathan Walker got some time, didn't he? By the way, on Nathan Walker, who signed a scholarship deal, so he's got the upgrade from no contract to some contract, which is probably the most significant of the contract upgrades you can get.
there you
From
go. There
nothing
you
to
go.
something. Do you remember a Blackcaps leg spinner from the very early 2000s? He played for, I think, Auckland and ND,
Brooke
one or the
Walker.
two or more, both, called Brooke Walker.
Yeah,
That's his dad. I didn't know that.
righto.
It's
Fair
Nathan
play.
Walker's dad.
Brooke Walker, leggy. He was. I can't pretend like I've got many memories, but I remember that phase of cricket. Like
Yeah, same.
he was in the mix, so shout out to him. He was in the mix. It's also so my point with the Phoenix, a lot of youngsters who will benefit from that derby. Same with the Kiwis. Like there's a lot of parallels there. A lot of young players for the Kiwis, they'll be better off for that experience against Tonga. A lot of the Phoenix players, young players, they will be better off for that derby experience. And I personally do not see a whole lot to worry about with the Kiwis or the Phoenix, despite their losses this weekend. But we all had fun, and that's the best thing about the A-League Derby and Pacific Championships Rugby League. We'll save the National League stuff. You're doing your National League yarn, so people can check that out. We might touch on those things in the bonus podcast on Thursday, as well as any other notable Kiwi sports things that pop up in the meantime. Let's just take a quick.
We'll save A-League Women's as well with the Wellington Phoenix because
yeah.
suffice to say their first game looked like they were quite undercooked, especially at the start. When you change formation basically in the first half, in the first game of the season, I think that game needs to be a little bit of a write-off. But they did fight back quite nicely in the second. I think it was 4-2 away to Western United, but it was it was a game where we need to see what they do after this game to get an idea of where the team is at, because it was very much a false start.
Let's take a trip around the world. Milly Clegg played her first game for Racing Louisville. What's your hard and fast breakdown about Milly Clegg with Racing Louisville?
Well, it took until the last 18 minutes of the season for her to finally get a game. It was a long wait. She was disrupted, the injury through preseason that was lingering from her previous A-League season. There was she went away for the Olympics, then she went away for the Under-20 World Cup, so she was in and out for Racing Louisville anyway. And I think because they'd signed her for a 3 or 4 year contract, it was very much like the first year wasn't the important one for them. They're trying to win games now. They're trying to make playoffs, which they didn't do, but they were making sort of veteran attacker kind of trades throughout the season. So there's word in the state where Milly Clegg was going to get the opportunity to play a lot. I wouldn't have minded seeing her pop off the bench once or twice in her previous 8 other unused sub afternoons, evenings, whatever. Could have done that. It wouldn't have been too hard. They didn't use all their subs every game. You could have given her a debut at some point, but it was a pretty cool one to get off the pines for the last 20 odd minutes of the season. They went into their last game having already been eliminated. They weren't eliminated as the round started, but not all the games kicked off at the same time. So when they kicked off, they were already out. And because they were already out, they didn't play very well, and they conceded a couple early goals, and that meant that even the result wasn't in a great spot. So there was no reason not to throw her out there, and sure enough, eventually they did. It was a cool moment for Milly Clegg to make that NWSL debut. I think she becomes the 8th New Zealander to have played in this league. Macy Fraser also making a debut earlier this year. Not sure what's going on with Macy Fraser at the moment because she hasn't played since the Olympics, but Milly Clegg definitely is a player who Racing Louisville are building into the future with, and so get a nice little cheeky debut, gives her some confidence heading into preseason next year, and we'll see how she's been leveling up in training when she gets a bit more leeway to play. Hopefully, doesn't take until the last 20 minutes of next season before she finally gets a game. We'll see what happens. But yeah, great milestone there for Milly Clegg. Big moment in her career.
Katie Kitching, 2 goals for Sunderland. What's the hard and fast breakdown on Katie Kitching?
Yeah, the first goal was a banger too. Outside the box, shaping up a little bit on a defender and just smoking it in. And that was to spring a Sunderland comeback victory as well. They scored like in the second minute of the game. Can't remember who they're playing, but they were down. Then they equalized, and then Kitching scored twice in the space of like 3 minutes to lead them on towards, I think it was a 4-2 win. So good from Katie Kitching, who has been getting in amongst the goal contributions in the second tier in England for Sunderland this year, as has Hannah Blake. But Hannah Blake wasn't the one who stood out for Durham this week. It was Mickey Foster. Blake actually played off the bench, but she got subbed on at halftime because they clearly realized they'd made a mistake. Subbed on Blake on the wing and subbed their striker as well because they were 1-0 down against Blackburn Rovers, who they should have beaten quite comfortably. And then they did beat them quite comfortably because in and amongst that game was Mickey Foster making her starting league debut for Durham. She's played off the bench and she's started a cup game, but this was the first time she's started a league game. And interesting on that, didn't play left back. She played defensive midfield and looked really good there too. It was getting a lot of touches, a little bit erratic with the passing at times, but also you can see the range of passing was a big deal, and the two-footedness really helped being in those kind of areas. And she scored an even better goal than that Katie Kitching one I was talking about, where she shapes up on a defender, cuts, smokes it past the keeper, top corner, get in. And yeah, that was a victory for Durham in the end. They came back to win that one. So couple of very good goals in the this is English second tier and in the women's championship. So good stuff there.
And then
Ben
the
Lane scored a
top
goal
tier,
as well.
in the top
Tyler
tier,
Bindon scored a goal as well, both in FA Cup early rounds.
in the top tier of England, the one and only, the woodsman of the forest, continues to score goals. We're
Yeah, I'm
doing
just
this.
realizing how many of these goals they were all just players based in England this week.
We do this every week, discussing Chris Wood goals, and it's I wouldn't say it's top tier in England, but it's not quite top tier status of just taking a moment and being like Aotearoa is awesome as sport. But if Chris Wood keeps scoring goals and Nottingham Forest keep being good, this is some crazy Kiwi footballing areas to go with the derby, to go with the girls, ladies, women banging goals as well. Elijah Just last week. Oh, there's so much cool Kiwi football stuff happening. What's the latest on Chris Wood?
Well, the latest, I guess, because I'm running out of stuff to say. Like Chris Wood scored another goal. Do I just repeat the same statistics in Flying Kiwis this week, but just
Well,
update
you
them
can
by
tell
1
me
week?
who he scored the goal against and how it happened and that type of stuff, you know.
Well, this is why I'm saying I think because he scored against who did they play? It was West Ham, wasn't it? They won 3-0 against West Ham. I think at this point it's less about I think the most important part of what Chris Wood's doing becomes less about what he's doing as an individual and more about how these goals that he's scoring, and he's up to what, 8 now in the Premier League from about 11 games. He's scored in 6 consecutive games for club and country, so including those 2 All Whites games. This is not just Chris Wood having a nice little spell for a team that's battling around the mid-table. This is Chris Wood being the top scorer and the overwhelming currently the most important, because even Morgan Gibbs-White has been their best attacking player for a little while. He's not even been playing a lot of these games. He's been in and out. They've rotated guys around him. They switched up their wingers. Callum Hudson-Odoi is in good form, but Chris Wood scoring all the goals for a team that currently sits third in the Premier League. This isn't Nottingham Forest in relegation battle, and these goals are to snatch important 1-1 draws against Fulham or Crystal Palace or whatever. He scored to set them up for a 3-0 win against West Ham to put Nottingham Forest up to third on the table. He is not the only guy doing well in this team. They've signed a Serbian centre-back, Milinkovic, who has been awesome and to help take their defense to another level. Their goalkeeper, finally, they seem to, with I think it's Matt Sells, who's Belgian. They've finally got a goalkeeper they can rely on, which has been a trouble for a couple of years for them. Um, their midfield's looking great. They've got an array of attackers and they've got focus. Like they know how they want to play, and they've figured out how best to get Chris Wood involved, which doesn't mean giving Chris Wood 30 touches a game, 40 touches, 50 touches. It means maybe he only has 15 touches, but he gets two good chances per game, and he's probably going to score one of those. That's often all it takes. He's also a good defensive presence. He wins a lot of aerials, so he gives them kind of like an anchor. You're in trouble at the back, hoof it up to the big man. He knows how to hold it up or flick it on to a winger or whatever. Like there's a clarity to what they're trying to do right now. And manager Nuno Espirito Santo has done just brilliant things at getting them into that place. And Chris Wood is a key figure within it. Like, imagine if he's playing Champions League next year, with Nottingham Forest. It's not likely. I think there's a very long way to go. We're not even about a quarter of the way through the season or something. But they're in third place right now. Like third place in the Premier League, I think they went above Arsenal this week. They're way above Chelsea or Manchester United, right? So pretty crazy stuff.
And big boy Bindon, what's the latest with him? Tyler Bindon. Reading FC.
Yeah. FA Cup first round. So they played a lower league team. That allowed them to do a little bit of rotation. This is a Reading team that's still under a transfer embargo, so they can't pay money to sign any players. So it's really important for them to bring through young players, and the Cup is obviously an opportunity for them to give some experience to those young guys. You're chucking out a bunch of youngsters. You still need some leadership around them to set things up. So we'll just give Tyler Bindon the captain's armband, right? Captain's Reading for the first time, 19 years old. The goalkeeper, he got subbed. He only played like 60 odd minutes or something like that. So they sub him off for the end. The goalkeeper in his team was a 35-year-old. So Bindon gets subbed off and hands the captain's armband to the 35-year-old who, like, Bindon was 2 years old when their keeper made his first professional appearance in English football. So, but he was captaining ahead of him. So these things, there's just sometimes you get red flags about athletes. With Tyler Bindon, it's just green flags everywhere. Like this is another one. They picked him to be the captain in a team playing alongside a bunch of youngsters. Some of them were just the same age as him. He's the experienced guy, but these guys are just the same age as him because he's doing this much so young. Doesn't even turn 20 for another couple months, and scored the first goal in a 2-0 victory. Like, it wasn't just captain, he also scored a goal as well. A clean sheet, let's not forget that bit too. So it's just another one of those little, like, stop and take notice of what crazy things Tyler Bindon is doing for the age that he is. It is like he might not be a Reading player by February 1st. It might come to the point where they're already ready to cash in on him because the reputation is there. Or if you're like those footballing scouts, that's a whole industry. You don't hear about it the way you hear about it with like basketball scouts or whatever, but those databases exist. If there's a teenage player who's playing this many minutes for a team, Reading are doing quite well this year. They were relegation threatened last year, but they're doing pretty well this season. Like a guy of that age and that profile doing what he's been doing, all the top clubs are aware of him. Like the top scouts, they know this guy exists. They have his name jotted down. That doesn't mean anything will happen, but they're aware of him. And so that's definitely transfer watch when January comes around. We'll see what kind of whispers come out from Reading, because they do need to sell players generally every window in order to keep the finances on, to keep the lights on at the ground, because they don't have any money from their owner. So they're in a tricky spot, and that puts all of their players in the shop window, not just Tyler Bindon, but Tyler Bindon might be the most saleable asset. Is a terrible way to refer to a human being, but as a footballer, that he might be the guy they can cash in on the best because of what he's doing, because of the reputation he's already building, and what he's just achieved in general in his career.
So just in men's football, in recent times, we've had in New Zealand Derby, Auckland FC versus Wellington Phoenix, and we got Chris Wood on fire in the highest level of English Premier League football, and we have Tyler Bindon captaining Reading as a 19-year-old in English football. Woo! And I there's a lot of similarities just there between Tyler Bindon and Isaiah Katoa and what he is doing for Tonga as a young leader for Tonga. Does that Emiliano Tade, is he playing for Western Springs now?
Yeah, and reckon Auckland City in a I thought he was done after last season. He looked like he couldn't even run anymore. But then he moved to Western Springs, and now he's just been like back to his best. And he doesn't have to play as much for them, but he's playing more than he did for City, and he just destroyed Auckland City. Not as good as Reed Drake. If you watch the Reed Drake run, you see he like trips up Mario Illich from behind at one point, and Illich grabs him by the collar and flings him around. It's scenes you don't normally see in a football pitch, and they both got yellow cards, which was shocking. Like Illich should have been sent off from the get-go, but never mind. And then when Reed Drake scores, he goes and grabs the ball from the goal like he's going to run it back to halfway, like they do. Gets up to Illich, who's walking back from like the edge of the box, changes his mind and just gives the ball to Illich instead. He's, here you go. Illich just stands there and lets it drop. It's a funny one.
I just watched that, and we're going to keep that in for the podcast. A little bit of chat that you shouldn't expect, but we're going to leave that in the podcast. Not? And as I was saying, Isaiah Katoa, very impressive young man. It was like, I was curious because Tonga was on a losing streak. They had lost 5 tests in a row prior to beating New Zealand. So that was happening with Katoa in the team. And Katoa, for some reason, he got the cut from the Dolphins as they were chasing a final spot in the NRL this season. So I was curious to see how all of that came together, and it came together with Tonga winning. Obviously, you know the story. Tonga got out to a big lead thanks to their rampaging forwards, just tore the Kiwis up through the middle. The Kiwis found a way to come back, and that is a very impressive thingamajig about the Kiwis' performance. They found a way to come back. Papali'i scored a try. Then you had exceptional tries. Keanu Kinney, Phoenix Crossland finishing off a fantastic manoeuvre. And Joseph Tapine, probably the best try I've ever seen. Doing a bit of Auckland FC at Mount Smart Stadium. That was awesome. Highly entertaining game. I put the slow start for the Kiwis down to the environment, the atmosphere, the arena. And Tonga know all about that. That is their home ground for International Rugby League. And to be honest, as it should be, like this is in Auckland. For those who aren't in Auckland, Mount Smart is within 2 kilometers from the biggest concentration of Tongan people outside of Tonga. Like, you don't need to go far from Mount Smart to get to Otahu. You don't need to go far from Mount Smart to get to Mangere. So, like, yes, Mount Smart is in Aotearoa. It's in Auckland. It should be a Kiwis home game. But if you know anything about Tongans in Auckland, shout out to all the Tongans in West Auckland, North Shore, East Auckland as well, big, GI areas and all that. And shout out to all the Tongans in Ponsonby and Epsom and Remuera as well. Big up to Tongans everywhere. But like there's no other way of looking at Mount Smart Stadium as Tonga's home ground in International Rugby League. And I think they were well prepared for the environment, the atmosphere, and I think the Kiwis weren't. And I'm not worried about that. Like, you've got Keanu Kinney, Tomoko, Warbrick, Crossland and hooker, Thompson, White, Neem. Like, these dudes are all fairly new to International Rugby League. And they got an awakening of what International Rugby League is really about. And even though that happened, they got back into the game. So it's very impressive. I just want to finish my Tonga bit though, because Isaiah Katoa is 20 years old and he's already got the most points for Tonga ever. Like, in the whole history of the world, Isaiah Katoa has the most points for Tonga. That's what he's doing. And I'm like, okay, this Tongan team, you go through it. Lehigh Hopewada, he's a youngster. And to be honest, his performance in this game, resembled a youngster stepping up to international rugby league in this arena. Tupou's a veteran. Moses Sully, pretty experienced. Paul Alamote, not very experienced in the Tongan jersey, but he just casually started at centre for the Panthers, best team, you know, all that stuff. Sione Katoa, he's experienced. Tui Lolahia, experienced. Isaiah Katoa, experienced. Vanua Blake, Havili, Kafusi, Olakawatu, Katoa, Iliasa Katoa, Taumalolo, they're all experienced Tongan internationals. Satili Tupanuia, Siwa Wong, experienced Tongan internationals. Taniela Paseka, he's not very experienced because I think this is his like debut phase for Tonga. Yeah, he's only played 2 tests, but he's an experienced NRL forward. Sonny Luke, he should be an experience. He doesn't really play much NRL footy. He's played 7 tests for Tonga. Like, Sonny Luke's played more than all the young Kiwis. He was at the 2022 World Cup with Isaiah Katoa, with Lolahia. Like, that's your spine. That spine combination is already there. That's the thing about Tonga, is all their fundamentals, all their chemistry, all their combinations, it's already there. It's been developed for, like, this group, 3 years. They've had the same squad year after year after year. And if you get into the identity, the playing style, Christian Wolff was their coach in 2017. He's still the coach. They've got 4 players from that win over New Zealand at the 2017 World Cup who are still playing under Christian Wolff. I don't know how or why they lost 5 tests in a row. They lost every test against England last year. They lost 18-0. They lost to Samoa at the 2020 World Cup by 2 points. I don't know how or why that happened.
I have a theory.
Hit me.
How many of those tests were at Mount Smart?
0.
That might be part of it.
But the issue is, you go back to 2022, Tonga lost to New Zealand at Mount Smart. 2019, Tonga lost to New Zealand at Mount Smart. The difference is those Kiwis teams were really, really good. Right, those teams, you've got, pretty sure Brandon Smith played on those tests. Don't think Sean Johnson played those tests. Let me double check. That would be funny. Because Sean Johnson played one of them, so shout out to him. But Tonga had John Asiata in the halves, so I don't think that would have worked out well.
Right, okay.
Yeah, this must be 2019. Tuivasa Shek, Joey Manu, Waitane Lesniak, Ken Mamalo when he was still pretty good, Bromwich, Smith, Hargreaves, Bromwich, Nikora, Liu, Hughes, Lisa Narmau, Sofa Solomona, Fisher Harris coming off the bench. That's a far better Kiwis team. You got halves of Sean Johnson and Benji Marshall. That's a far better Kiwis team. The 2022, let me double check this team. Oh my gosh. 2022, Joey Manu, Mulatalo, Niakori at centre when he was playing for the Eels, Petahiku, Rapana, Dylan Brown, Jerome Hughes, Bromwich, Smith, Fisher Harris, Papali'i, Bromwich, Tapane, Kieran Foran, Moses Leota, Asafa Solomon, and Nikora. That's a far better Kiwis team. Right, so if you put your best Kiwis team on the field, I still have New Zealand better than Tonga. And if we're working through my rankings, I've got to kind of balance it, because like this Kiwis team, I think they might be like the teams right now. I think it's Australia, Tonga, then you might go England, New Zealand, Samoa. If you're talking bigger picture over the last 3 years, I'm going Australia, New Zealand, England, Tonga, Samoa. Right, so that's, you gotta, this is the thing, I think for, especially for Kiwis Rugby League, You gotta have the nuance. You gotta have the nitty-gritty details. Because yes, like New Zealand, the team right now isn't very good because there's a lot of young players. But New Zealand, when they put their full-strength team on the field, they just rolled Australia 30-0. Like after the 2017 World Cup, New Zealand had back-to-back wins against Tonga at Mount Smart Stadium. That was meant to be the start of the Tongan Revolution. And they lost 2 games against New Zealand at Mount Smart. But if you put your best, like this is a almost full-strength Tongan team. If you put the best Tongan team available up against a weaker New Zealand team, this is what's going to happen. This is how competitive International Rugby League is and why it is so much fun. But to your point, those 5 consecutive losses were all, well, none of them were in New Zealand, let alone Mount Smart. But Tonga went through that adversity. They've got an experienced core, still got the same coach. The young players are actually experienced Tongan internationals. They know how they want to play. And Isaiah Katoa executed the droppy better than the Kiwis. So credit to Tonga. It's going to be a very fun final against Australia. Again, this is the great stuff about International Rugby League. We just got fun footy games. The Kiwis play PNG. Don't want to talk too much shit, but we'll see how that goes. Kiwi fans are playing the final against Australia. Gillaroos, they defeated PNG last weekend, and they are rocking and rolling, so I be interested to see how that goes. And I've got a nice little comparison here, because this tells you all you need to know about a little bit about Tonga, but also about how the Kiwis and Kiwi fans are playing. So Tonga versus New Zealand, Isaiah Katoa had 13 kicks, Tui Lolohea had 4 kicks. That's good kicking split. You've got your main kicker, but Lolohea's doing a bit of kicking as well. Kiwi Ferns halves against Australia, Tyler King had 5 kicks, Gail Broughton had 8 kicks. Against PNG, King had 4 kicks, Broughton had 2 kicks. Kiwis, Sean Johnson, 26 kicks, Shans Nickel-Clockstar, 0 kicks against Australia. Against Tonga, Sean Johnson, 13 kicks, Nickel-Clockstar, 0 kicks. You can say that shit coaching. It's like, would Cody Nikarima do better than Shans Nickel-Clockstar? Well, he might have a few kicks, but he's probably getting steamrolled out on an edge. But that's the position the Kiwis are in. There's no Jerome Hughes. There's no Dylan Brown. There's no Kieran Foran. Any of those players in the halves, I think it's a better Kiwis team. I am happy that we are coming to the end of the Sean Johnson era, though. I feel like I could just throw out some serious sizzling hot takes, but I'm just going to keep it tame, and I'm going to say in the final year of his career, we have seen the limitations of Sean Johnson. We saw it all season with the Warriors. The Warriors played their best footy without Sean Johnson. And we have now seen the limitations of Sean Johnson in the final year of his career, when he seems to be battling injuries. So fair play, but the final stage of his career, the limitations of Sean Johnson have been clear. And it's been clear with the Kiwis, it's been clear with the Warriors, and I think what I expect to happen is he's going to play really well against PNG the same way he played well in the last NRL game of the season against the Sharks. That's how it's all going to finish. But it's the situation. Like Sean Johnson was... I don't think Well, he's probably the fourth best half for New Zealand. And based on what we saw for the Warriors, some might say, including me, that Te Maire Martin was the better halfback for the Warriors this year. So you might say Sean Johnson's the fifth best half for the New Zealand Kiwis. I would say that. Others probably won't. But that's the situation for the Kiwis. And a lot of the Kiwis' points, Kinney had a break. There was razzle dazzle to set up Phoenix Crossland. And then there was individual brilliance from Joseph Tapine. That's how the Kiwi, and Papali'i just went from dummy half. That's how the Kiwis scored their points, and I'm just like, okay, yep. I've seen the limitations of Sean Johnson. I just want to put this chapter behind us and keep it moving. Because it's, I said it after the game against Australia, I'll say it again because it was a different type of performance, but the Kiwis have literally played like the Warriors. Like the viewing experience has been the same. My experience watching the Kiwis, has been the same as watching the Warriors this season. And Stacey Jones is a common factor, but to be like Michael Maguire isn't doing any better with this team, I don't think. Everyone, I don't know, there's some weird, like Kiwi Rugby League fans seem to hate Kiwi Rugby League, but that's a different conversation. I don't think Michael Maguire is doing better with this group of players because Michael Maguire, he beat Australia with a full-strength Kiwis team aside from the dummy halves. He had Joey Manu at centre. He had Mulatalo on the wing. He had Nikora at edge forward. He had Asafa Solomona and Moses Leota coming off the bench. He had a halves combination of Jerome Hughes and Dylan Brown. Like, it's a whole different challenge to what Stacey Jones is coming up with. So yes, Stacey Jones is a common factor between the Warriors and the Kiwis, but I also just think it's the final days of Sean Johnson, and it's admirable what he's doing, but we have to be realistic about the limitations of the teams with Sean Johnson at halfback in the very last chapter of his career, which is a key point. I'm not just beating up Sean Johnson. This is the end of his career, and we have to be realistic about what to expect in that stanza.
Yeah, and he wasn't even supposed to be in the squad. It's an emergency call-up at late notice as well. So it's not like he was even preparing to play these games. So, there was a nice story about him in the lead up to it, about how he's working on his tackle technique and stuff. And so it doesn't matter that he might only play one or two more games left in his career. He still wants to improve this stuff. He still wants to be the best. Yeah, but you lost a lot of games this year, and yeah, it's a bit like beating up a dead horse, though, isn't it? If you just start he's not going to play again after this. He was just doing what he could. So yeah, well, it's unfortunate, but I do also think the three halves, maybe even the four halves that you mentioned, if you chuck Te Maire Martin in there with Hughes and Brown and Foran, if any of those guys played, I think the Kiwis win this test match against Tonga. And I don't just mean if any of them played instead of Charles Nickel-Klokstad at 6. I also think if you put one of them with Nickel-Klokstad at 6 and one of them at 7, probably still win that test match. But there were other factors, of course, and I think the biggest one was just the way they dug themselves into a massive hole. And they did that, I think, I was watching it is quite shocking to see that unfold in real time. But I think you've given me some clarity on that about the experience aspect of it, because I do think thinking of that with a bit of distance, that is very much what it was, is hugely emotional performance from Tonga, and the Kiwis didn't match that emotion in the first 20, 30 minutes. They got there, they scored just before halftime. That was an important one. And then second half, they were kind of really good. They scored some brilliant tries, some genuinely brilliant tries, some amazing, the Tapine little kick through that you're talking about. That's Tapine and Toomey in the same week. I'm looking forward to that. And even then, on top of all of that, if Jermaine Asako kicks a 40-meter penalty goal, the Kiwis win. He doesn't kick it. Also misses a pretty good look at a drop goal. I think Johnson might have had a drop goal attempt as well, just in the same move, but not as good of a look. They had chances, and I think if that, I don't know that they would have gone to Golden Point. I think if they'd drawn, it would have been as good as a win because they'd have had better points differential from the loss to Australia versus Tonga's one. I think is how they were going to do it. I'm not sure though, but basically, yeah, they didn't match the emotion of an absolute maximum emotional performance from Tonga, where every hit is magnified by the crowd. And there were a lot of hits, and Kiwis were like bouncing off of tackles. It wasn't quite working like they should have. Like these guys are good enough for that not to be big enough for that not to be the case. But at the same time, like swinging that around to the sort of more hopeful aspects that you also alluded to, I think a great example of that is the performance of Keanu Kinney, who made like 300 errors in the first half. It was struggle streets for him, and then he was the best player in the pitch in the second half. Like he was unreal. Because they scored some brilliant tries. They made some great meters, and it's like much better, more effective in the second half. It wasn't because of playmaking out of the halves. It was mostly started from Keanu Kinney's running from fullback. Like he was the spark. He was the one that got them going. And the mentality of that, like to have what was clearly a bit of a shocker for the first 30 odd minutes, and then to be so good within the same game. It's not like you had a shocker, you went away, you thought about it all week, you came back the next week with much improved. Like that would still be great mentality. Like that would be a sign of an athlete who's got their head screwed on right. He did that within one game. You know, he just adjusted from, okay, I'm not going to let this affect me too much. This is not, I mean, it did to the start because there were quite a few errors there, but to then turn that around in game the way he did is immensely promising. And that is, I mean, that's why he's as good as he is. That's why he's as exciting a player. It's exciting a prospect because he's only, he hasn't played 50 games in the NRL yet. He's not beyond that prospect status yet. I think that also sums it up quite nicely as well. Is the comeback was amazing. They shouldn't have been in the hole that they were, but there's quite obvious how that happened and how they build from this moving forward.
You put yourself in Keanu Kinney's position, right? He's 20 years old and he's playing his second test in that arena. So yeah, he might.
And he plays for the Gold Coast Titans, so nothing he's done in NRL compares to this year. It's not like he's played grand finals or anything, you know.
So yeah, he might have a stinker, but as you said, and like Keanu, so that encapsulates the entire Kiwis performance because they were shook at the start, and that's okay. That's like, I put that down to inexperience, but they came back. Keanu Kinney bounced back. The Kiwis bounced back. But this is the crux of it. This is, boil it down. Keanu Kinney's 20 years old. He's played 2 tests and he's played 22 games of NRL footy. Isaiah Katoa, 20 years old. He's the same age. He's played 8 tests and 44 games. That's twice as much NRL footy and 4 times as much test footy. That is the difference between these two teams. I also just want to talk about the Warriors signing Tanah Boyd, because this is very interesting, because Tanah Boyd joins Luke Metcalf, Luke Hanson, Jet Cleary, Jesse Sorich, Talon Egan, and Jack Thompson as young Aussie halves who are in the Warriors right now. This is a murky time of year, so I don't know if Serbian international Jesse Sorich is still with the Warriors. I don't know if Talon Egan is still with the Warriors. I don't know if Jack Thompson is still with the Warriors. Until you see those lads playing junior footy for the Warriors and anyone else playing junior footy, you don't know where they are because there's no news, there's no signing trackers for players below that age grade. But the Warriors this year, they had Thompson playing under 17s. Egan and Sorich played SG Ball, and Jersey Flegg. Luke Hansen played Jersey Flegg and New South Wales Cup. Luke Metcalf was injured, played New South Wales Cup, then he played NRL. Jet Cleary he's come to the Warriors. So, and he played SG Ball and Jersey Flegg this year for the Panthers. So the Warriors this year, they had Metcalf, Hansen, Sorich, Egan, and Thompson. That's 5 young Aussie halves in their system. They've added 2 more, because they've added Jet Cleary and they've added Tanah Boyd. As I've said the whole time, the Warriors still have halves from Aotearoa. Again, I don't know if Caleb Lehman's staying with the Warriors. I don't know if Maui Winatana Patalasio is staying with the Warriors. Jack Thompson was highly influential in the Harold Matthews Cup team, but the Warriors also had Tyson Hansen from Rotorua, Deshauntain Tiwau, Otahuhu Jr. So they had an Aussie half in their champion under-17 team, but they also had young Kiwi halves. For every young Aussie half who's come to Aotearoa, the Warriors do have a Kiwi half. But there's clearly a trend there. And it's good that the 2 Andys, Andrew McFadden, Andrew Webster, they've identified a need, which is halfbacks, playmakers who have grown up in the Australian system. And B, young Aussies want to come to the Warriors. Right? Ivan Cleary decided, along with Jet, that the best place for Jet Cleary's development was the Warriors. Luke Hansen decided the best place for his development was the Warriors. Luke Metcalf, the best place for his development was the Warriors. Like, these dudes are coming to the Warriors for a reason, and I think that reason is because they believe that if, like, Hansen and Cleary, like Isaiah Katoa, they can see that the path is blocked at the Panthers. So what's the next best move? Katoa goes to the Dolphins, Hansen and Cleary go to the Warriors. The reason I think there are limitations on Shaun Johnson is because this season for the Warriors, he did most of the kicking. He got most of the touches, and the Warriors lost games. On top of that, the Warriors played their best footy without Shaun Johnson. You take Shaun Johnson out, and he's averaging like 480, 500 kicking meters per game. You take him out, the Warriors need some kicking. And they probably need better variety in their kicking. Like, you need a better split in the kicking duties. Luke Metcalf and Tamaita Martin, kicking isn't necessarily their forte, their strength. For Luke Metcalf, his strength, I believe, is his speed, his running game. And then everything else comes behind that, similar to Jerome Hughes. Tamaita Martin, his strength is his passing game, his distribution. Tanah Boyd, he's just a pure halfback. And if you compare, as I did for the newsletter on Friday, fresh after this news, sign up. Tanah Boyd, kicking meters per game in the last 3 seasons, 104.7, 436.3, 386.6. That's 3 seasons over 100 meters, 2 seasons over 350 meters, kicking meters. Tamaita Martin, 11.3, 63.6, and 161.3 this season. Luke Metcalf, 47.6, 38.8, 45.5. 3 seasons for Tamaita Martin and Luke Metcalf. 6 seasons combined. Only one of them's over 100 meters, kicking meters. Tanah Boyd's over 100 kicking meters in all 3 seasons. That doesn't tell us how good they are as halfbacks or halves, but it tells you the type of player that Tanah Boyd is, and I believe why the Warriors signed him. Because he does stuff that the other halves don't necessarily do. And he has grown up as a half in an Australian system. So yeah, Luke Hansen, Jet Cleary, Jesse Sorich, Jack Thompson, because Talon Egan played a bit of fullback for the Warriors this year. Those Aussie halves, they're not playing NRL next year. But they all grew up in Australian systems as halves. Now the Warriors have Luke Metcalf and Tanah Boyd, who will play NRL next season, who have that same foundation of playmaking in the Australian system. And I think it's... And the other thing here is that no one knew this signing was coming. I predicted they wouldn't sign anyone else. That's the thing about the Warriors. You can... Like, the November 1 hype is a bit, weird for me because, we've got next season, the November 1 hype is for 2026. Players can start to sign deals for 2026 from November 1. So, yeah, you can ponder the signings that are going to influence footy in 2026. But the Warriors just, do their business in quiet, in the shadows. And they just picked up Tanah Boyd for next season, right? That's not for 2026, that's for this season coming. And that's what I like about the Warriors. I like that there's a clear trend. They have identified a weakness in their system, and they're trying to fill that weakness with Aussie halves, as well as still having Kiwi halves developing alongside the Aussie halves. Lots of competition for starting spots in every single Warriors team. Competition, best man wins the role, everyone gets better. Tanah Boyd's adding that to the Warriors NRL team. Because if Luke Metcalf, Tamaita Martin and Chanel Harris-Tavita, if they're not training that well this summer, Tanah Boyd's going to get it. And if Tanah Boyd comes over to the Warriors and he's like, the Warriors are kind of shit, so, I'm a big dog, he won't do that. But if he does do that, Luke Metcalf's going to be training harder. Tamaita Martin's going to be training harder. And that's going to produce better results for the Warriors. So I think we need to finish the podcast because there's been a marathon effort, but we do it for Aotearoa. We do it for Aotearoa sport. So if you're still listening, big up to you. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube. Make sure you leave us a review, 5 stars preferably, on Spotify or Apple. Share the podcast around. We love Aotearoa. We love Aotearoa sport. And we will be recording another podcast, the weekly bonus podcast, on Thursday. So join the Patreon whānau. Upgrade a free newsletter subscription to a paid Substack subscription and access our bonus podcast. Otherwise, big up. Love yourself. Kia kaha. Stay beautiful. Chur chur.